back. I don't know what happened with Restream. For the first time, I kind of got kicked off of the platform. It says the live stream ended unexpectedly. But I'm here with my new friend. Hello, Kevin Monroe. And Kevin, you're just saying something about your last name and how your dad reacted to the family name. Please continue.
Well, you asked, did I get asked about Marilyn? And I said, well, my dad always called her cousin Marilyn, right? And Monroe wasn't her real last name, but he always loved referring to her as cousin Marilyn. So, Faye, I'm just excited to be here and for us to. Faye and I met the first day of this month is when we met. And
Oh.
this is our first time one-on-one in conversation. We met as part of a small group, and I'm so excited to be here with you and all of you that's watching. Whenever you watch, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in, guys. We won't be able to see all of you, not even face to face, but our countdown, our, person count, it's not always accurate. So please do drop in, say hi, ask us any questions, and we would love to answer questions related to what it's like to be a creator, to create a movement, to create a challenge. So, Kevin, before we jump right in, for those of my audience who are not as familiar with your work, I want to give you a quick shout out and quick intro, if that's okay.
Fine.
All right. So, everybody meet Kevin Monroe, who created, really this movement. I'm grateful for you. And I have these cards. I'll be showing you guys these envelopes that Kevin has sent to me. I'm really touched by it because Kevin envisions our world touched and transformed by gratitude and by the power of gratitude, the experience and the expression of gratitude. And I know that we talk about this all the time, but how do you practice? How do you integrate it into your daily life is something we really want to share with you. And he believes gratitude experienced is better than gratitude explained. And that gratitude is best experienced in a community. To that end, he creates environments, hosts encounters, and curates experiences, allowing people to explore, express, and experience gratitude. His most recent gratitude innovation is the I'm Grateful for You movement that is transforming workplaces, communities, congregations around the world. And I've listed his contact information links in the description wherever you're watching this, on LinkedIn, YouTube, social media. So please say hi, please go check out his work. And with that said, well, it's our today's chat. Yeah, Kevin, I would like to jump right in to say, like, what was your origin story before I am grateful for you? What did you do? Were you a banker? I'm going to pretend I didn't read any of your bio.
That's okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So, Faye, without going through all of the 63 years that it's been, and I don't mind saying I'm 63, I don't want to go all the way back, but I will go back 50 years and say when I was 13 years old, there was something, there was a desire I had then that I've had ever since then. I want to make the world a better place. I want it to matter that I've lived. And I think it should matter that you've lived and that who you watching. We want to make a difference in the world. Now, I jokingly say, and people that are of that age, they remember the Coca-Cola commercial, like on the hills of Switzerland, a whole bunch of young people, somebody playing an acoustic guitar. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I don't know if that's what started it or what, Faye, but there was always this desire to make the world a better place. And so, for me, it was a zigzag path of the ways I tried to do that. But there's a through line that runs through that. That's always this making the world a better place. So I worked in corporate America for 15 years. Then I went and joined a high-tech startup that wanted to make a difference in healthcare. Now, we didn't know that there was this thing called the internet bubble, and we didn't know that bubble was about to bust. Right, but we got on the end of the bubble busted, and our company went down the tubes. And then I was trying to figure out what's next, and I started working for a not-for-profit organization. And if you think back to the early 2000s, it seems like the not-for-profit world pretty much had a lock on the make a difference sector. um, and then things started changing. So 2005, I started a business, and the business is called X Factor Consulting. And if that business were a software, we'd probably be on version 5.3 of the software
Mhm.
because the company doesn't look anything like it did back then, except that we're still trying to make the world a better place and make a difference.
Wow. Coming from software, by the way, I also studied computer science and math, so I do relate to and have also worked in the software industry. And yeah, early 2000, that was interesting. That's exactly when I came to the US. So I can't believe I've
Really?
spent more time now at this age compared to the time I've spent in mainland China.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
Very interesting. So and, I see that you now have multiple web properties. I don't even like to call them that, but I love visiting your website and just see how soothing, how clear the
Mm,
message is. You're not trying to
mm.
overcomplicate things. So you have kevinmonroe.com. You have, I am grateful for you as a domain. And how, by the way, how did the idea of the Kevin Monroe brand come into place? That's your personal brand. And then the I am grateful for you.
Yeah, so and then I do owe you, an origin story of the gratitude work. I don't want I
Mhm,
wanna come back to that in a moment. We
mhm,
started this business. I started it as X Factor Consulting, right? And we tried to build that brand, or we built that brand for a number of years. And then in 2015, I met a friend, and I guess this was in the early days of personal brands. And my friend Mike Kim tells me, hey, you need to launch a personal brand. And so that's when Kevin D. Monroe came around because Kevin Monroe was already taken as a domain, basketball player or something. So I landed on kevindmonroe.com. And even in that, Faye, it's been several things. And I appreciate you saying that the website is clear now. If it's clear now, and we're working to clarify it even more, let me assure you, 2015, 2016, 2017, it was a mess, right? Because I didn't know
mhm,
what we were doing. And then to get back to the origin story real quickly, 2018, and I remember the date, and I can show you the date in a journal. April 17th, 2018. I woke up in a really dark place, and I know what depression's like, and I knew I was on the
mhm,
slippery slope of going somewhere dark into despair, and that's not anywhere I wanna go. I've been there before, and so I have morning rhythms and routines, even though, like this morning, I was up
mhm,
4:30 this morning without an alarm clock. I'm usually up between 4:30, 5:15 without an alarm clock. That
mhm,
day, April 17th, 7:30, I'm still struggling to get out of bed,
mhm,
right? And I just finally get out of bed, and there was no zeal for life. It was just darkness, and I'm a person of faith, and I cried out. I was in a prayer. Just a mentor had encouraged me, invited me to join him praying daily. And when he asked me, he said, "Would you join me in 15 minutes praying a day?" I'm like, um, Doug, I haven't prayed 15 minutes in the last 2 years. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me to do. But
mhm,
that day, April 17th, was day 744 of this journey of just sitting in silence a few minutes a morning. That's what it means for me. Opening myself up, reading some inspirational uh, words, scriptures, praying, asking God to speak, trying to hear if there's something to say. And that morning, I just cried out,
mhm,
Spirit, you are the spark of creativity. Spark something in me. Spark something in me. And Faye, 45 minutes later, what sparked in me was the idea for a program. And the program was like 85% fully formed. And we launched this program that we called the Extraordinary Experiment. Because, I don't know, I look at Faye. I mean, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot a moment,
Yeah,
Faye.
please.
When you look in the mirror, do you
Mm,
see Faye the extraordinary superhuman? Or do you see Faye just gosh, I'm just ordinary Faye? I don't know. I mean, maybe which
mm.
do you see? Because I will tell you, I see Kevin, ordinary guy.
That's such an interesting question, actually. It's very deep. I think I have different visions for myself. There's maybe the 2 versions you described, maybe there's somewhere in between that,
Yeah.
maybe sometimes less than ordinary, and then I wanna, this is the reason why I wanna pause on this because I think what do you see when you're facing the mirror by yourself as opposed to someone else explaining to you or encouraging you should feel a certain way? Or do you tie your own identity to a recent event, such as you've interviewed a really famous person, you've done something, you've appeared on some magazine? Like, do you see yourself better, greater than that version?
Yeah,
So,
some kind of
yeah.
external validation, right? There was
Mhm.
something that says you've arrived. You have this
Mm.
measure of stature and status because of these things.
Right.
Huh. Well,
Right.
for people who feel ordinary but want to live an extraordinary life, that's what we set out for. And we did this 13-week journey. And
Mhm.
each week went a little deeper and with a challenge and inviting people to do something. Week 1 was just the noticing challenge. Just be aware of what's around you because most people are totally self-absorbed, right?
Mhm.
Walking around with their head in their phones, not even seeing the other people around them, going through lines, never even talking to other people because they're just self-absorbed in this little bubble.
Mhm.
Well, week 6 on this 13-week journey was gratitude. In
Mhm.
fact, it was the first time that and this is 2018 when we did this program. First time I'd ever thought, are gratitude and being thankful the same thing?
Mhm. Mhm.
And when we tried to explain it in a video, I realized there was a difference. So then I was on the journey to discover that difference. Now I'll fast forward into June 2019.
Mhm.
In early morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, I hear these 4 words,
Mhm.
"Host a gratitude challenge." And it was with
Mhm.
a question mark. It wasn't a command. It wasn't, go host a gratitude challenge. It's just like, host a gratitude challenge. Well, I had a guy coming on my podcast that I had at the time who had written a book on gratitude, and he was going to join me for episode 101 because I wanted to ground the second 100 episodes in the good soil of gratitude. So I call up Steve. I said, "Hey, Steve, what do you think if we hosted a gratitude challenge?" He goes, "Great idea. Count me in." Faye,
Mhm.
I was expecting him to ask all kinds of questions and push back instead of
Yeah.
count me in. So then I called my friend Christy and said, "Hey, Christy, you want to help us plan a gratitude challenge?" "Sure, count me in." So we jumped on Zoom that afternoon. In an hour's time, we developed the plan.
Mhm.
And a week later, we've announced it. 2 weeks later, we've launched it. And
Mhm.
that's how I kinda got into doing gratitude focus activities. Now, something amazing happened in the weekend before we were going to launch. Another friend whose name is Steve Brown. If you see this, Steve, you gotta know I'm still grateful for your extravagant generosity that you show to me all the time since that time in July 2019. Steve goes, "Hey, Kevin, I have a Twitter group, a global group on Twitter. Can I share this with them?" I'm like,
Mhm.
"Sure, Steve." Sunday morning, he calls me. "Hey, Kevin, I write a blog. Can I put this in my blog today?" "Sure, Steve." So we busted our fannies, Faye, because we launched this the week of July 4th. We weren't thinking how crazy that is. July 4th fell on Thursday that year. July 5th,
Mhm.
we got 100 people. And then
Oh,
my friend
wow.
Steve hears about this. So from 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon to 12 noon on Monday when we closed the doors because we ran it as a closed cohort, 190 additional people joined us because of Steve's extravagant generosity. So
Wow.
we have 290 people joining us for this 10-day session. On Tuesday, I noticed something. There are 100 people on a wait list because Steve's promotion efforts just didn't stop, right? There's still people are still and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Then there was
Mhm.
this question. It was a bit rhetorical. What do you do? Well, Faye, we ran it again, right?
Mhm.
2 weeks later, we start another 10-day
Mhm.
challenge. We had 349 people join that second one, and I ended up hosting 22 sessions of that 10-day gratitude challenge, and we ended up having 3,000 people, close to 3,000 people from 58 countries of the world join those gratitude challenges.
Let me break that down. First of all, there are like 5, 6 people watching us on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for watching. Send us your questions, and it is such a
And hello,
incredible
Danny. Danny's
story.
a friend of mine. I haven't seen her in years, but, she's the one that's popped in with a message. So, hey, Danny.
Fantastic. Um, so Kevin, part of the people, who are watching this, we have some shared, common friends as well, like Chris, Michelle, who introduced us. And, I think it's incredible to say and to witness in the past few years, like a lot of people that I saw just came up with this idea. I want to start a challenge. I want to start a movement. Danny loves you, Kevin, and and at what point did you realize, like when you look back to say, wow, I really want this thing to work, or I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to do it anyways. But
Mm.
for this challenge to become so successful, what are some of the tipping points? Or people,
Mm.
Steve, as you mentioned, but let's just say, what if Steven didn't show up? What would the experience have been? Would it still
Mm.
be worth it to you? If 3,000 people didn't show up, what was the
Yeah,
decision to say,
okay, so,
you know?
um, I wanna answer the question, Faye, and I'm gonna answer it. I'll come back. This one, it just kind of unfolded, right? It
Yeah.
unfolded. I wasn't real sure. But I'll answer it 2 ways. The one is, folks, 6 years ago, I remember hearing these 4 words on a Sunday morning, and it's how I've tried to live my life and run my business since then. More led, less driven. More led, less driven. Having good ideas just pop.
Mhm.
Hey, Gordon. I'm so glad Gordon's here. We can have some fun with this one in a few minutes,
Sure.
Faye. Um, but this whole idea of I want to do inspired work. So when an inspired idea knocks at my door, like that one did, host a
Mhm.
gratitude challenge.
Mhm.
I over the last, I don't know, 7 years, and I can give credit to a mentor and friend of mine, Rich Sheridan, CEO of Monroe Innovations, author of Joy Inc. and Chief Joy Officer. Been a friend of mine for 12 years now. When I first met him, Faye, I remember him saying, Kevin, around here, we don't burn the ships and we don't boil the ocean.
Mm.
We just run the experiment.
Mhm.
Now, Faith, for me, who is still a recovering perfectionist, and I think the longest I've ever gone without a complete relapse is 2 days, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you just get wigged out over trying to perfect something. But
Mm.
this idea of running an experiment is so liberating to me because it's like, hey, we don't have to get it right.
Right, right.
So when an inspired idea shows up, I believe I have 2 initial responses and responsibilities. Number 1 is to say yes to the idea.
Mhm.
Open the door, let it in, right? Number 2 is do something, take some kind of action. So if you notice when
Mm.
I told this talking about this with, June 17th, 2019, the moment the idea came, I picked up my phone and I called Steve. Hey, Steve, do you want to do this with me? Here's an idea, right?
Mm.
So that's throwing it out there in the world and it's creating some accountability. Now
Mm.
I've invited somebody, right, to
Mm.
join. I've voiced the idea. So an idea shows up, say yes, take action. Then I invite Christy in. Now I'll fast forward a little bit. Uh, in January 2020, before the world went crazy, right? Before the world went crazy, uh, a friend of mine, Tracy Fenton, oh man, Nick Boulos, oh, we're gonna have some fun. We've got gratitude advocates here, some of whom started as skeptics, Faye. They didn't
Mhm.
believe when they
Mhm.
joined. We can talk about that in a moment. But my friend Tracy Fenton, who leads World Blue, asked me would I do a webinar for her leadership cohort. I'm like, sure, Tracy, what would you want me to do it on? She's like, duh, gratitude. Now, I will tell you, that's the first time I realized I had become the gratitude guy. Gratitude was just one of these things I had been dabbling in before then. But at that moment, it was like, oh, this is my work. So we set out to do a gratitude encounter that was supposed to happen in April of 2020, like 3 weeks after the world went crazy. So we don't end up getting to do that until August of 2020. Then,
Mhm.
so I've done one thing that I called a gratitude encounter. My friend Tracy said, will you host a webinar? I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I'd love to do something on gratitude, but I don't think you need a talking head for 45 minutes. You should be grateful, blah, 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 and then you ask, are there any questions? And of course not, because everybody faded off 40 minutes ago when they just realized you're a talking head. She said, well, what will you do? I said, I don't know. Let me think about it. So a couple of weeks later passed, I'm on my morning walk and I get this idea. And I stop, whip out my phone, open Evernote, and outline what became a gratitude encounter in 7 minutes. The whole thing was just there. Like, oh, here's what I want to do. And
Mhm.
then September 10th, 2020 rolls around. And I'm on my morning walk again. I walk every morning. And this question entered my mind, Faye, of all of the things that energize and excite you, Kevin, what is the one thing that has the broadest appeal and greatest impact? Now, if you're familiar with the book, The One Thing, that's kind of where that, maybe the one thing thinking came about. What's the one thing? And
Mhm.
instantly I knew my answer was gratitude. So then that day, to answer your question, I thought, what can I do to go into the gratitude business full time? And how do I get started? I didn't know, but I just knew this is what I wanted to do. Well, I'd hosted a gratitude encounter one time. So, Faye, that day I put on the calendar 7 sessions of the gratitude encounter starting October, the first Tuesday in October 2020, and I booked them through April 2021, first Tuesday
Mhm.
of every month. Still do these to this day. But that moment, I committed to do 7
Mhm.
to see, does this concept work? Because Faye, I know me. If I committed to do 1 or 2 and
Mhm.
not enough people showed up on the first or second time,
Mhm.
yeah, this
Mhm.
this isn't gonna work. There's not
Mhm.
a market for this. I didn't
Mhm.
even know there was a market, right? I just did this. The first one that we do, a friend of mine, Tobin, shows up. He's like, "Oh my gosh, Kevin, this is amazing. Did you know this is a commercially viable service?" Faye, I go, "No, I didn't.
Mhm.
Will
Mhm.
you help me market it as a commercially viable service?" So, I mean, there's a lot we can unpack here.
Mhm. Mm. For
The
sure, for sure. I
value of
think
friends, right? The value of asking for help.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you clearly have a lot of passion for this and you've already, people are raving about your brand. They've joined in. I would love to unpack and show my audience and people who are watching to say exactly like you said, you have to do these things more than once. I think about my YouTube journey, which remains to be an experiment since 2019. I have to pivot. I have to make change happen. So that's absolutely the right attitude. One question from Gordon. Kevin, how do you sustain the level of enthusiasm and energy every day? Because that's what you constantly project.
Mm. Ah, that's a great question, Gordon. Um, s- I'm not sure. I mean, I'm really not sure. I can
Mhm,
tell you things I do daily, right? So when I wake up in the morning, my wife and I were parents of 2 children. We are empty nesters. I am an early riser. My wife Gwen is not, right? So I have a couple of hours every morning to myself. And in those early morning hours, I have things I do every
mm,
day. I journal. I sit in silence. I listen to a meditation. I pray. I read. I just this year I started wanting to sit in silence 5 to 10 minutes a day, doing nothing, just trying to be still.
mm,
I have a dear friend, mentor, Oscar Trimboli, wrote this beautiful little book, Deep Listening. And I love
mm.
doing this, Faye, because this shows you how little the book is, right? There's
Wow.
the palm of my hand. Deep listening. Oscar and I were doing a listening program together 2 years ago. And he asked me, what's the difference between silence and stillness? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it. It took me a moment to answer. And then I realized silence for me is the external environment, right? I can make things quiet in my environment, not have any noise, right? It's quiet at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. But stillness is something totally different. Stillness is what happens in my mind, right? And then when I was trying to answer Oscar this question, I'm like, I can think back to the zoo, Oscar. I love going to the zoo. When I go to the zoo, I love watching the monkeys. And Oscar said, "Well, uh, stillness. How do you define?" I said, I said, "Oh, I because I talked about having monkey mind." having monkey mind,
Mhm.
right? Thoughts. I mean, there's so many mornings I wake up. My wife will say, "What, you woke up 2 o'clock this morning?" Well, something was on my mind. I knew I wasn't going back to sleep. So I start working. I start writing. That's
Mhm.
monkey mind. Oscar said, "Well, what do you do with monkey mind?" I said, "Well, stillness is when it's nap time in the monkey pen. And have you ever been to the zoo when it's nap time and the monkeys are
Mhm.
just, usually they're just, swinging everywhere. You go in at nap time and they're just all spread out and they're zonked out. Well,
Mhm.
that's what it's like to have stillness for me. It's when all of those crazy thoughts, oh my gosh, New Zealand is in the house.
Mhm. Fantastic.
New Zealand.
Yay.
Hey, Dallas, New Zealand is in the house. But that's what stillness is. So silence is stilling the outside. Stillness is silencing the inside and just sitting with my thoughts. And back to
Mhm.
your point, realizing I am enough and what I have is enough, right? And life is enough and just being at peace with that. But that gives me energy. I don't know. And then people give me energy. And seeing the difference that you and I, all of us, have the opportunity to make, those things inspire me when somebody has a breakthrough.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'll just say that one of the people in the thread here, and he has allowed me. Oh, I just said it was a guy. He's allowed me to say this because he's self-identified. When he joined one of our 2021, we started hosting these 30-day journeys, 30 days in the power of gratitude. And this friend was in the very first one. And it's like on day 28 when he says, I started as a skeptic. I didn't believe this gratitude stuff.
Mhm.
But now I do. And I can say this to you, Faye, and because we've had this conversation in the last month, he's still a believer. Almost 2 years later, still a believer in the power of gratitude. Now that energizes me. That excites me. Another person joined us. So I use this tool called Mentimeter. Do you know Mentimeter? It's a word.
No.
It's a tool that uses text messaging to allow interaction of people in the audience, right? Whether you're a live audience, virtual audience. So you put up a question and people can type in their responses. Ah,
Mentimeter.
yeah, there's Gordon. Gordon's my friend that said he was a skeptic. So we asked these questions. What word or phrase would you use to describe your experience of these 30
Mm.
days in the power of gratitude? The very first time I asked that question, Faye, these two words appear on the word cloud. And it's
Mhm.
it's anonymous, so I don't know who's saying it, right? But all of a sudden I see resurrection and rebirth. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, wow. Wow, what?" And I asked, "Hey, the person that wrote Resurrection and Rebirth, would you talk about this?" And my friend Portia Watkins. Now, Portia is one of these 3 people. Right now, we are in day 22 of our 10th session of 30 days in the power of gratitude. Portia Watkins is one of 3 people that's been in all 10 sessions, Faye.
Mhm.
All 10 sessions, every one of them. But she was there the first one. She goes, "That was me." She goes, "The first year of COVID, I lost 6 friends and family to COVID." And her job required her to be on site every day during COVID. So she's dealing with all of the fears and the
Mm.
frustrations, and
Mhm.
life had just become a challenge.
Yeah.
And through gratitude, she reconnected to purpose, to zeal for living.
Mhm.
Now, as the guide, that excites me. That energizes me. A couple of sessions later, a young lady, mother of 3, is with us. And as we're going through these 30 days, she's sharing that anxiety is so overwhelming in her life that she has panic attacks
Mhm.
regularly. And there are times she's even pulled off the side of the road on the interstate, and a first responder will stop to see if she's okay. And she'd say, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just need a few minutes. My car's fine. I'm just processing something." That's the kind of panic. So, the end of
Mhm.
30 days, we're having a celebration session. We asked this question on the word cloud with Mentimeter of what word or phrase would you use to describe these experiences? And all of a sudden, the word tranquility shows up on the screen. I'm like,
Mhm.
I've never seen that before. Tranquility. Well, this woman said, "Oh, that was me. You all know my story."
Mhm.
And of the anxiety, the level of panic, I went through these 30 days in the power of gratitude without one panic attack. And Faye, I felt that
Mm,
nudge to gently ask, how often does that happen? Her response, never.
mhm,
Never do I go 30 days without a panic attack. So those kind of things energize and excite me because and people frequently describe these encounters, these experiences as transformational, life-changing, inspiring, uplifting. So, Faye, the opportunity to do that kind of work that matters, that excites me every single
mhm.
day.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's a very complete answer to, uh, what Gordon was asking about, for sure, and I think I've worked on including my own project, Feisworld, and the ability to work on a number of projects really taught me over the years of how grateful I am, first of all, to have my friends near me, having these creators to be part of my universe, my world, and they do inspire me every day. And I think it's also important to break down the barriers to think, this is your maybe it was your passion project. I don't think it sounded, the word money has not even come into the ether, and you are doing this because you love it and we can all feel it. So my question is, what's your advice to people who are doing something that they feel powerful, they feel like they really should do, even they must do, and is taking maybe time away from their own projects, family, friends,
Mm,
their free time, but they really want to do this? How do you help people understand that, see clearly, and then understanding whether there is a monetary outcome or
yeah.
not? How do they balance
Hmm.
that, the thought? A lot of people are too embarrassed to even talk about, or feel like it's just not right to talk about money. So what's your take on that? You've committed a lot of your time and energy into this project.
Yeah, I have. And so I want to fully disclose here. Faye asked me, could she ask me this question? I said, yeah, I might not like my answer, Faye, but let's talk
Mhm,
about it.
mhm,
And um, hmm. So I'll just be honest here. I don't have the revenue nut cracked fully yet,
mhm. Yeah.
right? We have had some amazing uh, Oh, I'm looking at my optimism is fueled by my yeah, I saw that quote, Simone. Michael J. Fox says, "My optimism is fueled by my gratitude, and with gratitude, optimism is sustainable." I love that. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that a little more. But from
Mhm,
a revenue standpoint, right? The thing that's interesting, and so many of us uh, have these. Uh, roller coaster, right?
mhm,
Something happens. I mean, Faye, a year ago on the same day, right? So 2 years ago, my friend Tobin sees this and says, "You know, this is a commercially viable service." So we
mhm,
did smaller companies even in 2019. I mean, in 2020, 2021, on the same day, I received contracts from two of the leading companies in the world on the same day. I'm like, how does this happen? Right? That PepsiCo
mhm,
and Pfizer signed me up for work. And now the interesting with both of those, one was a one-time event, one was a limited term project.
mhm,
There's still opportunity to do more. We haven't cracked the nut for doing more yet, right?
mhm,
So those are things. And then I've had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest companies in the world. The most recent one was Amazon. Do a project with one group inside Amazon. Well, now I want to figure out how to do work with all of Amazon, right? If
mhm,
we help
mhm,
one division of Amazon Web Services, why can't we help all of them? So
mhm,
that's, uh, and to me, that's where it's a relationship quest.
mhm,
Right, because all of these things, let me just they found me. I would not know what door to knock on inside
mhm,
an organization as big as Amazon or as big as Pfizer or as big as PepsiCo. But people had seen the gratitude encounters we were doing. People had joined a gratitude encounter, which is absolutely a free thing I do on the first Tuesday of every month. And there people come and then they ask, "Hey, do you do this for companies?" Yes, I do. Would you do it for our company? Of course I will. Right. And
mhm,
then you start building that. But it's just this again, it's experimenting. And I have a friend right now in the
Mhm,
corporate world that wants to jump out and do something else, but it's kinda like,
mhm.
yeah, when's the time right? I don't know. There's no one set answer for
Yeah.
everybody.
So one thing this is me jumping in and hearing some opportunities, and I like to kind of present and just share those ideas because you approach a lot of people, and I can see that some of the folks who are very close and dear to your heart, who are part of the group, most likely have a lot of connections, their own companies, for instance, the companies they work for, or maybe they're entrepreneurs, literally it's their company. There's more leverage there. And even just helping like spread the word of how something is done. Because I think what I have noticed with content creation and, there's something I'm really passionate about, which are like, I don't like the word brand deals. Sometimes it's called sponsorships, or like collaboration with brands is I noticed that brands do want to understand how it breaks down. Yes, they want to know the impact and people have positive feedback in general, but a lot of the times they want to kind of see how how it's made, what happens behind the scenes, how you're able to wrangle and engage with an audience of any size. Like you said, sometimes a small group. I love small group exercises, 4 to 5 people, a dozen or so people. They may be wondering, like, Kevin, is there a version where you can do a town hall size experience? And the answer most likely is yes. So I think if there's more opportunities to show how it's done, plus people's experience and connecting the dots of you have 300 people, 300 soldiers, and each one of them probably at a minimum have a few hundred connections on LinkedIn. I can imagine when these soldiers start telling like field stories, there's definitely going to be a ripple effect. What do you think of that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Faye. Um, so the first Friday of this year, I had this idea of inviting people to be a gratitude ambassador.
Mhm,
Now, and I want to make a distinction here. This wasn't to be a Kevin Monroe ambassador. This wasn't to be my brand ambassador. It's
mhm,
just like to be a gratitude ambassador. But
mhm,
now, for some of those people, they want to do both. They want to grow
mhm,
gratitude in the world. So the only qualification to be a gratitude ambassador, at least at this point, is to one, believe in gratitude, and two, to believe the world needs more of it, right? And if
mhm,
you want to do this, we started a group on LinkedIn called Gratitude Ambassadors.
mhm,
Now, some of those ambassadors have opened doors into their companies. That's
mhm,
how I got into the big pharmaceutical company. Right? Somebody opened the door and said, "Hey, you need to talk to somebody here." Right? So this idea,
mhm.
I heard a gentleman say this: you don't focus on building your resume, you focus on building relationships,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm,
Because it's somebody that says, "Hey, I experienced this. This was amazing. I want to introduce you to somebody." So
yeah.
I'm trying to read this.
I love this question, Simone. If I type anything, you won't be able to see it because LinkedIn doesn't allow me to reply
Yeah.
to comments. This is a great question. And after what Kevin has to say, I have something to add to this as well. The
Okay.
question
So wait a minute.
is the question
Okay.
is for people who are listening to this as a podcast later on. Simone Joe Moore said, "Is the belonging to tribes within a company debilitating us in large, complex?" Again, I've seen this happen in consulting and advertising. What a
Ah,
great question, Kevin. What do you think?
is the belonging to the tribes within a company debilitating us?
Like creating silos. Oh, we're copywriters. We're friends. We're designers. We're friends. Let's not be friends with the project managers.
Okay, okay, now I'm getting it. Okay,
Okay.
okay, wow. Yeah, it is. Okay, so, wait, first off, I was so excited just to see a question about belonging because I built that's something that excites me, Faye. We all have this innate longing for belonging. We
Mhm,
want to be seen, heard, and valued. But yes, if you find a place where you are seen, heard, and valued, and then you stop being seen, heard, and valued from anybody else, right? You're not open to that. You've got, hey, the 6 of us, the 20 of us, the 50
mhm,
it's us. And now it's us against the world,
mhm,
right? No, that's not healthy. That's not healthy, I don't think. And we do see that in big companies. Is that, yeah. Um, you know, I would even take it a little further, Simone. It's not just silos. People create empires, and then they pit their empire against somebody else's empire, and
Mhm,
they're wanting to expand their empire. And if it's not their leader's idea, they don't want to support it, right? If it's not our idea. So I
mhm.
think we just need to bust those to some degree, but still have belonging. Now, Faye, you had something you wanted to add to
Yeah.
what you said.
I think it's really true. I think some of this, Simone and Dallas, I agree with you. I've witnessed this, and in my 20s, in my early 30s, it's a really difficult situation. So I just want to acknowledge that. I think, especially coming from consulting and marketing agencies, there's a tendency that you have witnessed when an entire department, let's say, is removed from the company because a particular skill or offering or service just are no longer supported by the company, and that can be very harsh. So that is internally, sometimes this is unspoken, unsaid, is, oh, we got to stick to each other.
Yeah.
Copywriters are the best, designers are needed forever, digital is not important. um these things can be very difficult,
Well,
even if you personally feel differently about how to be stronger. Let's be friends with everybody, let's really make connections. If your team doesn't feel the same way, that it's hard to sell that message. So one of the things that I have done is, I think, number one, decide that you're going to be different, that you might create a different situation for yourself. So I did something because I wanted to do, honestly. It's not like I'm here to piss off somebody, but I started a digital production learning group, which is started by it's about our department, but I purposely walked into everyone, IT, copywriting, PR, TV ads, commercials. I walked into every department and invited people to join the group to talk about their discipline and what they have learned. And people loved it. And HR even stepped in and started ordering free pizza for us. And that was such an invaluable experience. And I didn't have to be the know-it-all either. I was no expert. I only know, slice of the pie. And I think I really kind of reunited people in a way, in a very unexpected way, kind of the Kevin way as well. So try
so
something
Faye,
and see if that works.
you used a word that I loved when I heard you say it, and then heard you expand on invitation, invite, invite. You know,
Mm,
um, the end of February 2019, I noticed there were 5 Fridays in March. So this was an experiment. I started hosting. I thought, what if I host a hangout every Friday at 12 noon? Because I had that window, and that window opened it up to people in Europe as well as people on the West Coast of the US. So I started hosting what was just called a hangout on Fridays. And
mhm,
I saw week one, I wasn't real sure. 9 people showed up. We weren't real sure what was going to happen. We had this wonderful time. Week two, the value proposition started becoming clear.
mhm,
Week three, it was growing like crazy. I started, how did you get here? How did you find out about this? And the answer was always the same. Oh, so and so
mm,
invited me. I was invited. Somebody invited me. And I
mm,
started recognizing this phrase, and I coined the phrase, wow, the power of invitation. The power of invitation. What if we just invite people in, right? We don't erect walls to keep people out. We
mhm,
we lower the gates, open the doors, and invite people in. And when we extend an invitation, people are just as free to say yes as they are to say no, right? And it's just crazy.
mhm,
But you started inviting people, and you started creating alliances and
mhm,
finding allies in those other departments, because they're people that feel like what you feel and believe the way you believe. So why
mhm,
don't we make allies with them over this cause, rather than, uh, create little fiefdoms that we're now
mhm.
trying to fight against each other.
Very true. And I think one of the things, Kevin, that I've noticed is, I know that you come from a history of working in software companies and many different career paths potentially, and you've met a lot of people along the way. Personally, for me, to look beyond the corporation I was working for was really helpful because, trust me, as a younger person, like 5, 10, 15 years ago, it was so essential. It was expected of me to work very long hours, nights and weekends. So I get it. Your work friends are supposed to be your buddies, your family. And I trust me, I build an incredible, really incredible relationships, people I'm still in touch
Mm,
with and
yeah.
supported throughout the pandemic. But it was so essential for me when I started the show. Kevin is now episode, I think, 328 right now. I think I've memorized it. So I've spoken with over 300 people. Kevin has spoken with over 3,000 people because of the gratitude challenge. And you start to see a whole new picture beyond what you're looking at, who you interact with every day. And that is huge for me. And one example would be, I want to just like throw it out there. One of the guys I interviewed said, I just want to be able to, bring my kids to school and stand outside the school at 2 o'clock to welcome them home. It sounds so mundane. And I said, I want to be there for my mom's medical appointments. I don't want her
Yeah,
to walk in and talk to the
yeah.
doctor by herself. And that was such a North Star, and realize that's the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And I said, that would never be possible because I don't know anybody who can do that
Mhm,
in my
mhm,
circle. And when I
mhm.
started the interview, I have 20 people, then 50, then 100 people who show me the way. And
Mm.
then when I realized it's possible.
Oh, okay, so I heard this quote 20 years ago. First time I ever heard it. I was in a meeting. It was a town hall meeting. Barbara Sable from the Kellogg Foundation, she shares this. Relationships are primary, all else is derivative.
Mhm.
Relationships are primary, all else is derivative. And I know some of the people here have heard me say that in sessions because it's what my father taught me, but it was a little more refined, you know. And so what that creates for me, Faye, is this desire. Okay, when you and I met, right? We had a mutual friend, Chris, that invited 12 people to a 90-minute conversation.
Mhm.
Chris was the only one of the 12 people I knew. I didn't even read the
That's funny.
invitation the first time because I thought it was for something else. And then all of a sudden I start seeing people respond. I realize what we're being invited to. And
Mhm.
I looked at this and Chris loved it, but I mean, because I just shared it. I went and looked up everybody's profile, including yours, that was on the list, and
Mhm.
I asked this question: will my life be richer from spending 90 minutes with these people?
Yeah.
And the answer was absolutely. Now, Faye, this hasn't even
Mhm.
been a month. So Chris and I talked in the last hour, right? I mean, 30 minutes before I was talking to you, I was on a phone with Chris about something we're doing. And Chris tells me you all were talking last night. Right. So
Mhm.
it's not even been a
Yeah.
month. And uh I've had 5 one-on-one conversations with 5 of the 12 people that were there. I've
Mhm.
been invited. Michelle Chaney was on with her last week creating content
Mhm.
for Content College, right?
Mhm.
And been invited to be Pick My Brains with Maxine. Pick My Brain, not brains. Pick My Brain. Great
Mhm.
site. Check it out. All of this because we invested in relationships. And now I'm here with you because I said yes, you
Mhm.
said yes
Yeah,
to
exactly.
an
We just give it a
invitation.
shot. We didn't know how this is gonna go. Kevin, you're one of the newest friend that I've had, and we had a very this is the first one-on-one. So give it a chance. How bad could it be? And so far it's been very pleasant, and I'm so thrilled to be connected to your friends as well. So one more question from Simone. Oh, this is more like this is more like a reflection. It's so true. I think Simone said, I think people have forgotten our work chart heart lines are not the only part of our nexus, but the sidelines, dotted line connection with other teams is
Oh,
just as important, sometimes even more so, more important. And Simone, I just have to agree with you because I realize sometimes people within the same domain, same expertise, might even have some sort of weird competitions going on. As opposed to when you look at any company, any organization, you don't
yeah.
only have designers, you don't only have bankers. You need people from IT, from design, from strategy to really work more cohesively together. So you're absolutely right.
Oh,
Kevin,
so
your thoughts?
there's a book. Benjamin Hardy authored the book, but it's Dan Sullivan's idea. And the book is called Who, Not How. And
Mhm,
we have been taught to think that the answer to every question we have is, how can I do that? How can I do that? And Dan Sullivan, Simone, says the real answer is, who can help me? Right?
mhm,
Mapping that out. It's not, how can I do this? Well, who do I know or who do I not know? But I know somebody that knows that could introduce me to the
mm,
answer or help me find the solution rather than thinking, how do I? How do I? How do I? So the answer to every uh, how do I do that question is a who can help me answer.
Absolutely. And Kevin, I really I want to respect your time. We have about like 5 minutes or so left, and I want to cover and kind of get in there and talk about the idea of following your passion, maybe, anywhere 20, 30, 50% of the time. And then, in terms of revenue, and make sure that we can all pay the bills, be comfortable, be responsible for our family, for ourselves, that it's okay to work on something, on the side. Maybe that's a part-time job. Maybe that's a full-time job, a part-time job. So I want to be very transparent and vulnerable by saying, yes, at one point, in the future, hopefully the near future, I get to work on Feisworld, the podcast, documentary, YouTube videos, and all that jazz. 100% of my time. I don't do that. I haven't done that really consistently on a full-time basis. So I do take on clients, I do work on YouTube strategy for clients. I have a phone call tonight at 10 p.m. And because the client is based in Australia. So it's not a sacrifice. I still very much enjoy the
Right.
consulting side of things. So Kevin, do you mind speaking to how you're able to balance this passion project with maybe working with companies and also doing other types of work?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mentioned that 17 years I've had my business. That business originally started working with nonprofits, doing strategy and leadership development, board retreats, strategic planning. Now, you will not find that anywhere on my website
Mhm,
because that's not the work I'm aspiring to do now. But I have legacy clients for whom I still do those projects, right? And when one of
mhm,
those, or when a client is referred to me by one of my legacy clients, a new client, I will entertain doing that because those things help pave the way to get to
mhm,
the passion work we want to do. So
mhm,
I think of it as this two things. One, how do we extend the runway, right?
mhm,
How do you get just more time that you
mhm,
can keep the plane flying before you have to shut down?
mhm,
Or and the other thing, gosh, how do we get more oxygen? Because
mhm,
when you feel that squeeze of money, what do you feel like? You feel like I can't breathe, right? I don't have enough oxygen, and we need oxygen to survive. So do whatever it takes to keep the lights on, the bills paid while you are creating that you want to become. And and
mhm,
and then recognize relationships are going to be what opens the door. Someone is going to see what you're doing, know what you do, and make an introduction that becomes
mhm,
part of the answer, right? And then, it's this balancing thing. Maybe it's 75-25 at some point, then it becomes 50-50, and then all
mhm.
of a sudden it's now
Yeah,
75% is coming from your new project.
that's right.
And you just keep going until you can do all of it this. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I love the transparency. This is something we have to talk about, guys. I think it's so many of us creators are thinking about 0 to 100, either all or nothing. It's just not how it works. So I love this new comment from the reinvention
yeah.
perspective. A new key trend is, um, oh, what is,
Verite, how awesome. Great to
yeah,
have you here.
competition,
Co-opetition, right?
co-opetition.
Balancing cooperation and competition, collaboration and competition.
Oh,
So people that might have been adversaries in the past are now collaborators or cooperators, right? Because
ooh,
there's this new approach. Uh, and the other thing is, how do we raise the water for all the boats on the river?
that's
Right?
right.
I had a friend a couple of weeks ago introduce me to somebody by email that was starting to do something in gratitude. And my response was, and the person's name was Lizzie. And I remember typing this, "Go, Lizzie, go. How can I help you?" And my friend Melissa responded to me, brought tears to my eyes. She goes, "That's why I love you. I knew that would be your response." Not like, "Oh no, somebody else is
Mhm,
trying to get in the gratitude space." How do we shut them down rather
mhm,
than how do we go, "Hey, we need more people doing this because there's
mhm,
8 billion people on the planet." Maybe you saw that last week, right? There are now 8
mhm,
billion people. I don't believe I have the capacity to serve 8 billion people. But
Right.
I want all 8 billion to be exposed to gratitude.
Mhm. That's
So that requires all of us doing this.
that's right. Another great question from Simone. But what techniques to carve out that balance of keeping the lights on versus passion? What are your favorite way or ways?
Yeah. Um, wha
I mean, I think you mentioned one, right,
Yeah, I
Kevin?
mean,
You
do
you work
whatever
with
it takes.
corporations.
Part of
Mhm.
it is doing whatever it takes. And okay, so let's be transparent. Faye, you mentioned something. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not really good at this. I want to get better at this. I'm serious. I want to get
Yeah, yeah.
better at this. Asking people to help.
Yeah.
Asking people, hey, do you know somebody that you could introduce me to? You've seen what we do. Is there somebody you know that could
Mhm.
benefit from this? Would you make an introduction?
Mhm.
Right? Rather than just trying to take it all ourselves. And I will tell
Mhm.
you, I mean, one of my favorite books, I was looking for it. It's laying around here somewhere. Oh, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Do you know this book? The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. It's a children's
No?
book, but it's a great philosophy book. Two things out of this, then we'll be done. Uh, so it's a boy that then meets the mole, and then they go on, they meet the fox, and they meet the horse. Uh, and then at one point, the boy asked the horse, um, "What is the bravest thing you've ever done?" Ask
Mhm.
for help.
Yeah.
And to recognize that asking for help is not giving up, it's refusing to give up,
Mhm.
right? So
Mm.
we need to get better at opening the door and asking people for help.
I think that's the such an important message, everyone, especially for women. Women have the tendency there are a lot of, women who are watching us at the moment. We always prioritize everybody else, whether that's a spouse, your friends, family, your children, sister, brother, everybody else, and we always come in last because I think
Stranger,
yeah,
right?
we've been educated that way, right? It's a selflessness. It's a
Yeah,
this
yeah, mm,
this somehow this attribute we have to hold on to. But you're absolutely right, Kevin. Like asking for help has been one of the most challenging things, and I'm working on daily. I feel like that's the thing I'm working on, and I believe I know at the beginning you mentioned depression, mental health. It's a absolute real thing, and I think it is for people like us who have experience, who have the almost in a way privilege to be able to see it, to seek help, to understand it better is so important, right? And I think just connecting the dots and asking for help is so essential. And to believe that people around you, they love you and they want you to be successful and they want you to be happy. And if somebody turns you down, so what? It's just for me, it's not right now. Not right now. Doesn't mean never. And I
yeah,
have other people to turn to.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And then, okay, so Faye, the book I have listened to most in the last year and a half,
Mhm.
and there is a reason why. It is The 7 Decisions by Andy Andrews. And I listened to it on Audible because Andy reads it himself and he's such a great voice talent. When their voice character is he's a comedian, used to be a comedian. And so if they're different voices, you get all of these characterizations. But there's 7 decisions.
Mhm.
The seventh decision, I'm going to tell you, this is why. This is the secret. This is why I keep listening to this book. I've now listened to it 8 times. I've not listened to any other book 8 times in the last ever.
Mhm.
Seventh decision, I will persevere without exception. I will persevere. Other people will persevere until it gets tough and then they quit. And he tells the story of an Aboriginal tribe of rain dancers that when they dance, it rains, it rains. And, in Australia, one of the white community leaders is calling for help and asked the chief of the Aboriginal tribe, what is the secret to your success? Whenever you all dance, it always rains. And the chief says, it's simple.
Mhm.
We don't stop dancing until it starts raining.
What's the name of the book again?
The 7 decisions.
The 7
So,
Decision.
the 7 decisions. So, folks, I'm just
Um,
telling you, don't stop. Don't stop dancing. Do whatever you have to do to
mm,
get oxygen in the tank, to extend the runway, to keep doing what you feel so passionate about doing. Ask for help. And then, yeah, Simone, then uh persevere and just keep at it. Don't quit.
mm,
And that's one of the things that I kinda laugh at. I mean, I have a friend, what's our greatest strength? Our strength is we just won't quit.
mhm.
And the way we would actually say it, we're too dumb to quit, right? We just keep going. Whatever you
Yeah,
wanna say, but just keep going. So,
yeah.
wow.
So
Mm,
many comments. I realize even if I pin the comment right now, and they won't fly in until like the new ones here. But actually, I'm gonna do this for. I want to thank everybody who is here with us.
yes.
If you want to drop us any final thoughts and comments, you'll be on screen. But I want to thank everybody who's tuning in. I know how precious your time is, and I know most of you are here for Kevin. I hope you learned something, and being able to have some key takeaways from this. And Kevin, like before we wrap up, if there's one thing you want people to do to think
Mm,
about
mm.
before we part ways, what would that be?
Oh, it is so simple, Faye. What if we all do this right now? But I mean, as soon as this is over, what if you think, and just whoever is the first person that comes to your mind, who is somebody that you are thankful, you are glad they are in your life, however they're in your life, friend, relative, employer, coworker, whoever that is. The next thing you do, take a moment and send them
Mm,
a text message and say, "I'm grateful for you. Here's why." However you say that, send them a message. Just say, "Man, I'm so happy that you're my friend. I'm grateful to have you in my life." Uh, every time I host a gratitude encounter, Faye, and I did this
mm,
yesterday. This time yesterday, I was with a group, uh, a tea company, Yamamoto Yama Tea, and
mhm,
we invited people to reach out, and people get stories back. And you may send a message to someone
mhm,
who's really on the brink of despair right now, and all of a
mhm.
sudden, your text message telling them you're grateful for them,
Yeah.
it sparks hope. It 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 is a uh, bit of light for them. So send a text to somebody. And then come back and post in the thread what happened, or send me a message. And if, yeah, there are several people here that I know, a couple. I don't think I know Simone, but I promise you, I'm going to know Simone before this day is over.
So true. I meet so many people through live streams, and we follow each other, and uh it's amazing how we can help each other just discover the content that we produce more. You're not alone, guys. This is
You're not
just
alone.
You're not alone. There are a lot of success stories out there. Everything seems easy overnight. But no, success is measured by decades. And I want to take a moment and just show you guys, what I've received from Kevin. Not only I get my own envelopes, but I also get two packages of Friend of Feisworld. And on the back, it's just like, look how beautiful everything is. I'm grateful for you. And it's just incredible. Like these are the cards that you can get from I'm grateful for you.co. So
Yep.
.co. You can hand this out to people. I feel like, yeah, I'm gonna go to farmers market and just like hand to random people. It doesn't have to be people who know me really
It's
well.
right. So my friend Vicky that works for um, Pfizer, she goes and wherever she's at in work, or at the Panera Bread last week, she's picking up an order for the team,
Mhm,
uh, and she gives the person, writes on the back a little note how grateful she was for them. They were amazing. The
mhm,
person didn't speak English, didn't understand. The manager came up and picked the card and explained to her, and all of a sudden she's crying. She's
mm.
crying because expressing gratitude transcends culture, it transcends language. It's amazing. So when you tell somebody, "I'm grateful for you, here's why," you will make a difference in their life. And many people will respond, Faye, and say, "You made my day."
Yeah.
So that's what we all get to do this afternoon. So let's do it. Let's go make somebody's day.
Let's do it, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Be sure to check out Kevin's work, Kevin's website as well as imgratefulforyou.co. And yeah, start spreading the love. And I hope all of you have a wonderful day. And I'll see you next time when we go live. Bye.